Good stuff, isn't it? Tubular Bells 3, a quarter of a century on from the first album. I can't believe I've said that. Mike Oldfield has certainly outlived the punks that deposed him from the top of the charts back in the 1970s, and Mike's here this afternoon. Can you believe that it's a quarter of a century? I mean, it makes me feel so old.
Oh dear. Well, I keep pretending that time hasn't passed, you know, and I still feel as young as I did when I was 19, but when you say it like that, a quarter of a century, you know, I suppose the only sign I've got of aging is I'd start to look at things a bit weird. I think my eyesight's just on the verge now of going, so I might have to have reading glasses soon.
Did you have the confidence then, back when you were 19? Did you think that you were making music that would last? Because it was strange the way the music at the time suddenly became not so in vogue because of what happened with punk at the end of the 70s.
I did think I was going to make something successful, but I couldn't understand why all the record companies I went to see just couldn't see it the way I did. And I was just very fortunate to have fallen in with the beginnings of Virgin. But I think the thing about my music is that it doesn't really follow any particular age pattern. It still sounds quite modern and unique even now, even although it was made 25 years ago.
Can you just tell us how you did make the original?
How?
Where did you start? Where did you record it? You didn't record it in a garage or a bedroom or anything like that. Well, how did it actually start?
Well, there was a long period of 2 years sort of composing it. I was living in a little house, my parents' house in Harold Hill in Essex, and I had this old Victorian upright piano which had been out of tune. Just plonked away on that all the time and gradually composed it. And then when I went to the Manor to record it, I didn't want to have lots of other musicians, and I was able to play most things, so I just hired all the instruments that I needed and gradually played layer by layer and built the whole thing up from the ground upwards. And most of it, the whole of the first half was done in 1 week. That's all that Richard gave me. He said, I'll give you a week. If we don't like it, you're out. So I worked like an animal for a week.
But I always think it's interesting to know how you persuaded him to take you on, because like you said, you'd been to everybody else and they all said, clear off.
Well, I wasn't so much Richard, who is not really very well known for his musical taste. It was more like his managing director, Simon Draper, who was interested in my demo tapes and sort of said, well, why don't we give Mike a try? We're looking for something unique. It's going to be our first release on Virgin. It was probably more Simon Draper's responsibility.
And I know it's a strange question to ask with hindsight, but did you ever realise what you were unleashing then? Because you were so young, really, and
I know. I often think about that.
That success. I wonder whether I don't know. How do you look back on it?
I mean, I was just so happy to have released my first album. All I really wanted to do is to get into a studio and work and create something, and I thought it would be successful. I had no idea that it would be still 25 years later. The original one is still selling, I don't know, thousands and thousands of copies, and I had no idea that it would give me such a long-lasting career, and I just feel very, very fortunate that it happened the way it did.
And what about the success, though, Mike, so young? Because
very difficult. Yeah,
because I'm thinking that, you know, like 19-year-olds now, in a way, live in a culture of celebrity and stardom, and when young people like young Michael Owen playing football, they seem so much more prepared for the attention and the stardom and all of that. No, I should think it was a lot different for you, wasn't it, in 1973?
Well, I was a very shy teenager in the first place, and, you know, people didn't really warm to me. I was kind of introverted and just into my music. And then when suddenly I became so successful so quickly, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I hated the way people would turn from, like, 1 minute they didn't like me, and the next minute they were all over me, want my autograph. I just couldn't handle this, that the personality, the celebrity was more impressive than me as a human being. And I ran away and lived in a little cottage on top of a hillside in the Welsh borderlands, and took the telephone off the hook, and I never wanted to speak to anybody. And of course this upset a lot of people and record companies. They wanted me to concert tour, do all kinds of TV interviews, and I just hid away, and that probably contributed a lot to the backlash that came afterwards, with the second album, which was completely hammered to death, you know. And
but it's always that thing, isn't it? Always that contradiction in a way of, you know, as a musician, of course, you want the attention, you want to hear your music listened to by lots of people, but for you, what came with it was hard to handle. Must have been hard to handle. It
was very hard to handle, but I was, as I said before, I was young, I was introverted, also very phobic. I used to have panic attacks and all this kind of thing, and the last thing I wanted was to be in the spotlight. So I just hid in. I was into model aeroplanes at the time, and that used to amuse the media, because this, you know, #1 throughout the world. Now I was on the top of the hillside with my woolly hat on and with my radio-controlled gliders, and I was quite happy doing that.
Yeah, people made a lot of that, didn't they? Did they think you were weird because you kind of raced off to the Welsh borders? Not particularly the Welsh borders, but went and hid.
Yes. Then I got this reputation of being the hermit, you know, which I sort of was at the time. But I'm a little bit like a snake. I change my skin every few years. And
you can say that again.
I went through this sort of rebirth experience, sort of, you know, a psychological thing. And suddenly I was talking to everybody. I was having nude photographs taken of myself, and I was going completely wild. And then I calmed down again, and for, I suppose, the next 7 years, I gradually calmed down. And then I moved to Ibiza a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and there's a lot been made out of that. I want to talk a bit about that when we talk about the new album. But I wonder what made you like that? You know, this bit of a chameleon in a way. Was it something in your upbringing? Was it I don't know, was it just something about you?
I think that's just the way I am, you know, and I think it's genetic, and I was born like that, you know. I can swing from, you know, the depths of depression to, you know, ecstatic happiness, and I can be very silent, and I can be very loud sometimes, and I think it comes out in my music. People hold me responsible for new age music, which is very, very calm and peaceful, but I don't think they've listened to my albums, because some bits are very loud, very aggressive, very dynamic. Of course, there are quiet bits as well.
Yeah, but even the quiet bits sometimes can feel sinister and dark. And
well, that's the Exorcist, you know, that's why...
Exactly why they use that.
I always felt a bit sort of weird and haunted, and, you know, there's a kind of spooky feeling about me, and perhaps that's why they used it for The Exorcist.
But you know, you say about how you can be up and down. Your mum was an alcoholic, wasn't she? And I wonder whether that reflected on you, because living with an alcoholic, I mean, we were talking to Tony Adams, the Arsenal captain, who's just written a book about being an alcoholic a couple of weeks ago on the programme, and that's what he was saying about his life and how up and down he was. And if you're a kid growing up with that...
I suppose so, yes. I mean, it was very cyclic, you know, so she would have, you know, maybe 3 months, but gradually getting worse, and then there would be a period of confinement, hospital confinement, and so this kind of up and down perhaps did affect me in some way, you know, and then subconsciously, and it could have contributed to, you know, the way I am. And I'm absolutely sure that if I hadn't have had the upbringing that I did, I wouldn't be the musician I am.
Yeah.
So it sort of pays off in the end.
It's funny you should say that, because Joe Orton's, you know, the playwright from Leicester, his sister was talking yesterday about how his mum was a real tyrant, but she felt that had he not had that upbringing, the artistic side of him might not come out. It's strange to look at it like that, isn't it?
It's horrible, but, you know, it seems to create worthwhile art. You really have to suffer with torture, you know, tortured artists, and certainly one of those.
I want to talk some more about that in a moment. Mike Oldfield is with us this afternoon. We're going to talk about Tubular Bells 3 in a moment. If you have got a question for Mike and you want me to ask something on your behalf, do give me a call. 0500 909 693 is the number if you have a question for Mike. We'll hear some more music in a moment, but first Lynn's got a bit of travel news. You're with 5 Live. Our guest this afternoon is Mike Oldfield. His new album is Tubular Bells 3. Let's just have a listen to Serpent Dream from the album. lovely. I really like this. Now, I said to you then, insulting you, is that you playing the guitar?
Well, of course it is, yes. I'm a guitarist first and foremost. I just play other things in my spare time, if you like.
I think it was interesting. We were talking before the travel news about the way you sometimes are up and down. Do you have to create some sort of tension in your life for the music to come out? Because I know this album has been recorded a lot in Ibiza, and I've read in the press a lot of stuff about you getting into drugs and drink and being a bit mad there. What's the truth of that? What really happened there?
Well, I suppose, first of all, I ended up in Ibiza mostly by accident. I was looking for a piece of land where to build my dream house, which I designed, and I just happened to find the perfect place in Ibiza, and later on discovered that it was the party capital of the whole of Europe, and also the influence, going to clubs, being bombarded with dance music the whole time, obviously it's going to rub off, and I thought, well, I could do a Tubular Bells 3 that was danceable. I even learned how to dance myself. I learned this strange Brazilian sort of half dance, half martial art called capoeira. And there's a lot of crazy people on the island, and most of them out of their brains on one thing or another. And, it's very difficult to hold a routine together. And I found myself just going gradually downhill. And I suppose one of the worst moment was, I crashed my car and I was over the limit and I lost my license. And, there's something about the place. I prefer it in the winter when it's just, it becomes a small Spanish island, just Spanish people there. But in the end, I had to get out, and I moved out of there permanently now.
It's funny, isn't it?
Coming back down to planet Earth.
A lot of us, if we had the money to do that, we would assume that, going to live in the sunshine would be fantastic. But it isn't it's funny how what we sometimes think would be wonderful, the reality for somebody like you can afford to go and do it is actually...
Well, it's like people who win the lottery often brings real sorrow and misery to them, And if you can have everything you want, quite often you find that, it doesn't bring you happiness. I've learned over the years that to be happy, it has to start from inside you. And, realistically, you could be happy with very little, and a lot of people are. And so money, it doesn't bring you happiness. But luckily, I've got my music, so that's my real thing in life.
You were lucky in a way that if you were driving a car drunk, you didn't kill yourself.
Yes, exactly.
That's the frightening thing about...
But have you ever been to Ibiza in the summertime? Well, you know what it's like. Well, there's only really one town that's crazy, but it's more than that. There's something about... I was often wondering what it was. Maybe there's something in the local wine, because it just does send you crazy. And they have this strange drink called yerbas, which is like 5,000% proof, and you get to have one of those, and you're going, you want to go bullfighting or something.
Yeah, it's something to do with the drink and the sunshine.
I think I'll stay in Chalfont St Giles. It's much calmer there.
But it must have been something to do with you as well about reliving the youth you might not have had at 19.
Exactly.
I know that you've done a lot of therapy, and I'm sure that's what therapists would say.
That's exactly. You see, I left school. I went straight on the road. I was a musician, and suddenly I was incredibly successful. I never got a chance to develop these social skills, making friends, relaxing, having a good time. And I suppose when I got to Ibiza, so that the little adolescent part of me thought, right, well, I know I'm 44, well, I can have my adolescence now. And I spent a couple of years, I got it out of my system, finally, I hope.
Yeah, because most of us are similar age.
Yes.
I was sort of being stupid and liking punk music. You couldn't do that when you were top of the chart with Tubular Bells, could you? No,
I suppose I couldn't, yes. I quite like punk music now. I didn't at the time. I hated the punk.
You're definitely reliving your youth then, aren't you? Are you still involved in therapy? Because I know once before you told me that you used to fund therapy for people who couldn't afford it, didn't you? Because you believed in it so much.
Well, at this time, there was still a bit of a taboo about, psychiatrists and therapy. And I had, for several years, had a trust which we helped quite a few people, actually. No, I spent more than a year and a half in therapy, and I feel I know exactly what's wrong with me, why I am like I am, why I get stressed, upset, angry, but not all the time. The best thing I discovered is meditation, actually, which is the opposite. You just completely switch off. And I'm not in therapy at the moment, although I might do some more training, more in the spiritual line of meditation, this kind of thing.
You see, that's the interesting thing, the power of silence. A bit later on in the program, incidentally, we're going to be talking to a guy in America who's just done some research about combining modern technological medicine with meditation, and it's curing in America people's psoriasis. Yes. And, for somebody like you who's had a quarter of a century of noise. Probably silence is what you need.
I love silence.
Hey, look, we've got some questions from listeners, if you don't mind, Mike.
Yes.
Peter Edwards, this is an obvious question, really, I suppose. Peter Edwards from Manchester says, do you feel responsible for Richard Branson's success? And are the two of you good friends now? Because I know you were locked into a contract with him for a long time, weren't you? And it did cause a bit of bitterness.
I would think that Richard would have probably got somewhere without me, because he's that kind of person. He's great at inspiring people to do their best. Whether it would have taken him longer and whether Virgin Records would have been a success is another question. And I'm not sure he would have got into airlines, because I took a flying course and I took him up in my plane, and I pretended to turn the engine off and kind of scare him, because he was always playing horrible practical jokes on me. And I thought perhaps he got his own back by buying a jumbo jet instead of my little Cessna.
Do you ever see each other now?
Yes, I do. And there was a long period, because this contract with Virgin lasted 17 years. And by the end of it, I didn't like the people there anymore. And I was a bit bitter about that. But we did get together a few weeks ago, and I would count him as a friend. I would call him a friend, and I like him and I respect him. He's a bit stupid and tacky sometimes, but he's a character, and I like that. Yeah,
you can say that of him, can't you? Keith Barnfield says, in artistic terms, which album are you most pleased with and gives you the most satisfaction?
I can't really say. I just think of it as a whole body of work, all of them. There's one little bit here which I love, and then 5 minutes later there's a bit I think, my God, how did I do that? Why it's so terrible? And then there's another little bit which I love. I suppose. I really can't comment on that. I don't know. I'll leave it. I'm going to wait until I'm about 95.
And then give the answer.
By then I should be on my 30th album, and I'll listen to them all, and then I'll judge.
David Collins in Loo in Cornwall says, why didn't you turn up to play the orchestral version of Tubular Bells at the Royal Albert Hall in the 70s? Because he was very disappointed you weren't there, and he's never found out why.
Yes. I'll explain that to you. I was talking earlier about this when I didn't want to do concerts. I didn't want to do anything, didn't want to talk to anybody. So really, against my wishes, this Tubular Bells was scored out for orchestra. And I didn't exactly fight it, but I didn't want to be involved in it. It was never meant for an orchestra. If I was going to write an orchestral piece of music, I would do that. And I didn't think it would work, and it didn't work. It was live on television. I just didn't want to be a part of it.
And that was the answer. Mick from Birmingham, are you going to tour at all?
Yes. I'm so much back into live concerts. The one we did in London
at the Horse Guards Parade, wasn't it? With Big Ben as well. I thought that was brilliant, the way Big Ben was involved.
Big Ben made a special appearance. We're putting together dates now for, I think, March, April, May, this kind of stuff. And I've got something very special planned for the Millennium Evening, but I'll keep it secret about that at the moment.
What are you going to do? Big gig?
Not telling you.
I had to ask, didn't I? Man in the Rain is the single. What's it about, Man in the Rain? I thought somebody told me it was about you splitting from your family.
Well, it was. When I'm writing a song, I try and get an atmosphere, a feeling of it. And to me, one of the most powerful scenes in the movies is the end of The Maltese Falcon. And they're in the rain, and Humphrey Bogart, and it's raining, and it's all kind of sad, and I just had this picture of a man in the rain, and at the time I was going through a painful split up, and I just combined these two feelings and this image, and just this feeling as a sort of lonely man, black and white, you know, very, very movie-like. And then that's how it came about, really.
Let's have a listen to it then.
You're the one who's really breaking my heart. Had you said you just threw it all away, living in a world that you could never be a part of. And every time you walk away, you can't stay, no, you can't stay. You're a loser, but still touching by that train. And you must be on your way tonight, thinking you right through your modern rain. What's the use in hanging round?
Very Moonlight Shadow and Maggie Riley, isn't it?
Yes, well, it was supposed to be. In fact, I wrote it just after Moonlight Shadow, but I
Oh, as long ago as that?
never got round to recording it.
Are you pleased with the way it sounds?
This one, yes. I'm going to try. I tried several times to do a version of this, but I finally found the right approach and the right thing, and I thought it was useful to put it on Tubular Bells 3.
And how happy are you now, Mike, with this new album and the way you are and the things you've been through? Do you feel happy at the moment or not?
I just accept myself the way I am. I have happy periods and I have unhappy periods. It's just the way I am. I don't suppose I'll ever be happy all the time. And if I was, perhaps I wouldn't make the music that I do and have success. So just accept things the way they are. At least I have my meditation once a day, and I can say I'm peaceful, at least for those few minutes that I'm switched off, you know.
And we all need a bit of peace, don't we?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Right.
Nice to have you here on Five
That was my
Live.
pleasure, thank you.
Mike's album, Tubular Bells 3, is already out on WEA, and the single, Man in the Rain, which we just heard, is going to be out in the shops on Monday, isn't it? Thanks very much for being here.
My
on Five
pleasure,
Live.
that was lovely.